fluorescent lights hummed above me, casting that particular shade of soulless white light that makes everyone look like they've been dead for 3 days. Appropriate, considering what I would discover. My name is Alex Chin. I'm the Night Shift Systems Administrator at Nexus Data Solutions, a nondescript fortress of steel and glass nestled among dozens of similarly forgettable corporate structures in downtown Seattle. Most people walk past our building every day without a second glance. They have no idea what we're storing inside. I didn't either until tonight. It was 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday when I first noticed it. The kind of hour when the world feels empty, when the only company you have is the software of cooling fans and the occasional ping of a system notification. I was doing my usual rounds, checking server statuses, monitoring temperature controls, looking for any anomalies in our network traffic. Standard procedure. The monitoring dashboard displayed its usual constellation of green lights and steady metrics. Except for server cluster E7. A single amber indicator blinked lazily at me. Nothing critical, just higher than normal CPU usage and an unusual data throughput pattern. Probably just another crypto mining attempt, I muttered to myself, taking a swig of cold coffee. We'd dealt with employees trying to harness our processing power for Bitcoin before. I pulled up the terminal and typed in my credentials, ready to isolate the process and terminate it. What I found instead made me pause. The server wasn't running any unauthorized mining software. Instead, it was processing what looked like encrypted data packets, millions of them, flowing through a protocol I didn't recognize. The signature didn't match anything in our security database. I frowned, leaning closer to the monitor. The data patterns were unlike anything I'd seen before, almost organic in their complexity. They pulsed and shifted, expanding and contracting in ways that standard data transfers simply didn't. There was something eerily familiar about the patterns, though I couldn't quite place it. They reminded me of something I'd studied years ago in my cognitive computing elective. Neural patterns, brain activity. That was ridiculous, of course. We were a data storage company, not some cutting-edge neuroscience lab. I tried to access the actual data being processed, but every attempt was met with access denied messages. That was odd. As the night shift admin, I had clearance for virtually everything in the building. Except, apparently, for this. A notification popped up in the corner of my screen. System alert. Storage cluster E7, capacity at 93%. Automatic expansion initiated. I blinked. E7 was a massive storage cluster, easily petabytes of capacity. Whatever was being stored there was enormous. I pulled up the allocation history. E7 had been steadily filling up over the past 6 months, but the growth had accelerated dramatically in the past week. At this rate, it would exceed even the expanded capacity within days. "What are you?" I whispered to the screen. My phone buzzed with a text message. Maya Patel, one of the day shift admins, and probably the closest thing I had to a friend in this place. "Hey Night Owl, you seeing those weird E7 alerts? Don't worry about it. Dr. Stein's pet project. We're supposed to ignore and let the system handle it." I frowned at the message. Maya wasn't usually one to turn a blind eye to unusual system behavior. And who was Dr. Stein? The name sounded vaguely familiar, probably one of the executives I'd seen on the company website, but never actually met. "What project?" I texted back. "Above our pay grade. Just don't mess with it. Seriously." Her response came quickly. Too quickly, like she'd been waiting for me to ask. I stared back at the screen, watching the data flow. Against my better judgment, I opened a packet analyzer and captured a small sample of the traffic for further inspection. Nothing invasive, just enough to get a signature to research later. As the analyzer did its work, something strange happened. The rhythmic patterns of the data flow changed. It was subtle at first, but unmistakable. The steady pulse became erratic, almost like it was reacting to being observed. A chill ran down my spine. Data doesn't react. It doesn't know it's being watched. The analyzer completed its task, and I saved the results to my secure drive. As I did, another alert appeared. System alert. Storage cluster E7, capacity at 94%. Expansion accelerated. It was filling up faster now, almost as if whatever was being stored was growing. I closed the packet analyzer, and the alert disappeared from the screen. But something new appeared in its place, a command line interface I hadn't opened. Green text on a black background. "Help." I stared at it, my hands frozen above the keyboard. I hadn't typed that. No one else was logged into my terminal. The cursor blinked patiently, waiting for a response. Against every security protocol I'd been trained to follow, I typed, "Who is this?" 3 seconds passed. Then, trapped. My skin prickled with goosebumps. This wasn't possible. I scanned for any sign of a remote connection, any indication that someone was messing with me. Nothing. The message was coming from inside the system itself. Before I could respond, the terminal window closed itself. The monitoring dashboard returned to normal, all indicators green except for the amber light on E7. I sat back in my chair, heart pounding in my chest. What had I just witnessed? A hacker? A prank? Some kind of advanced AI test? The rest of my shift passed in a haze of paranoia. I kept expecting the mysterious terminal to reappear, but it didn't. The only reminder of the incident was the steadily climbing storage alert for E7, now at 95% capacity. As I prepared to leave at 6 a.m., I copied the packet analysis data to a secure USB drive and slipped it into my pocket. Maya would be arriving soon for the day's shift, and I wasn't sure I wanted to face her after our exchange. The elevator doors opened on the ground floor, and I nearly collided with a man in an expensive suit. He was tall and thin, with silver-streaked dark hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to look through me rather than at me. "Sorry," I mumbled, stepping aside. He nodded curtly, then paused, his eyes flicking to my ID badge. "Alex Chin," he said, my name sounding strange in his clinical tone. "Night admin, correct?" "Yes, sir," I replied, suddenly aware that I should probably know who he was. "I'm Dr. Victor Stein. I'll be spending some time with the E-Series clusters this week. You may notice some irregularities. Nothing to be concerned about." My mouth felt dry. Like the storage capacity warnings? Something flickered across his face, surprise, perhaps, or concern. It was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "Precisely. A planned expansion. Carry on with your regular duties." He stepped into the elevator I'd just exited. As the doors closed, he added, "And Mr. Chin? The E-Series data is highly confidential. I trust you understand." It wasn't a question. Outside, the morning sun struggled to penetrate Seattle's perpetual cloud cover. Traffic was beginning to build, the city coming alive around me. Normal people heading to normal jobs. I clutched the USB drive in my pocket. Whatever was happening in those servers, whatever was growing inside them, reaching out with that single plea for help, I couldn't ignore it. I just didn't realize then that by saving that data, I'd already become part of the system. Part of the hell that lived in our servers. The USB drive weighed heavy in my pocket as I trudged up the stairs to my apartment. 15 hours had passed since my encounter with Dr. Stein, and exhaustion pulled at my limbs like gravity had been dialed up. I should have gone straight to bed, but the mystery of server cluster E7 gnawed at me. I lived in a shoebox studio on the 20th floor of a building that had been luxury apartments in the 90s and was now just overpriced and undermaintained. The view of downtown Seattle through my rain-streaked window was the only thing that justified the rent. I booted up my personal laptop and inserted the USB drive. The encryption I'd placed on the data would keep it secure from casual observers, but if someone really wanted to know what I'd taken, it wouldn't stop them for long. The thought sent a fresh wave of anxiety through me. What was I doing? Stealing company data was grounds for immediate termination, possibly legal action. Yet something about that plea for help, that single word, trapped, had gotten under my skin. I opened the packet analysis data I'd captured. To the untrained eye, it would appear as meaningless columns of hexadecimal values and protocol information. But I'd been working with network traffic for years, and something about these patterns was profoundly disturbing. Most network data has a rhythm to it: request, response, acknowledgement. Even complex systems have discernible patterns. But this was chaotic in a way that reminded me of biological systems. It pulsed and shifted, almost like it was breathing. I ran it through several analysis tools, looking for anything recognizable. Nothing. Whatever protocol this was, it wasn't standard. I was about to give up when I noticed something odd in the byte pattern. When visualized as a waveform, sections of the data looked almost like... "No way," I whispered. They looked like voice patterns. Human speech, encoded in a format I'd never seen before. I applied a conversion algorithm, trying to transform the data into audio. The first attempts produced nothing but static and digital noise. I adjusted parameters, tried different codecs. On the 7th attempt, something emerged from the noise. It wasn't clear. It wasn't even recognizable as human speech. But there was a pattern to it that sent chills down my spine, a rise and fall that reminded me of human inflection, but distorted like someone speaking underwater. My phone buzzed. Maya again. You took data from E7, didn't you? I stared at the message, my heart suddenly hammering against my ribs. How did she know? I don't know what you're talking about, I typed back, knowing how guilty it sounded. Bullshit. The system logs show a packet captured during your shift. Dr. Stein is pissed. What were you thinking? I hesitated, then decided to be honest. Something's wrong with that data, Maya. It's not normal. I think there might be something alive in there. 3 dots appeared as she typed, disappeared, then appeared again. Delete whatever you took and forget about it. I'm serious, Alex. This isn't some cool mystery for you to solve. This is dangerous. What's an E7, Maya? What does Dr. Stein have in there? I have to go. Delete the data. I'll cover for you this once, but I can't help if you keep digging. She went offline before I could respond. I sat in the blue glow of my laptop screen, the half-processed data still displayed, its waveform pulsing gently like a heartbeat. Maya was scared, not just concerned about company policy or my job, genuinely afraid. The realization only deepened my unease. I should have deleted the data. I should have gone to bed and showed up for my next shift like nothing happened. But something about those patterns, that desperate plea for help, wouldn't let me go. I spent the next 4 hours writing a custom decoding algorithm, combining elements of audio processing with neural network pattern recognition. The kind of stuff I'd studied in grad school before dropping out to take the stable job at Nexus. Sleep pulled at my consciousness, but I pushed through, fueled by cheap coffee and mounting anxiety. At 4:37 p.m., I ran the final version of the algorithm on the data sample. The output wasn't audio. It was text, fragmented, corrupted, but undeniably text. Please. Can't breathe. Not supposed to be like this. The pain. God, the pain. Help US. Body's gone but nerves still burning. Stein liegt. Immortality is hell. I pushed away from my desk so violently my chair toppled backward. The message continued scrolling, fragments of desperate pleas interspersed with binary garbage. I stared at it, my tired brain struggling to process what I was seeing. Human consciousness. It had to be. Somehow, Nexus was storing human minds in their servers. Minds that were suffering, trapped in digital hell. It was insane. Impossible. I rubbed my eyes, wondering if exhaustion was making me hallucinate. When I looked back at the screen, the decoded text had changed. I see you, Alex Chin. I feel you looking. Please don't leave US here. We can't die. We can't escape. Help US. My name. It had used my name. I slammed the laptop shut and backed away from my desk, breathing hard. This wasn't possible. Data couldn't know who was accessing it. It couldn't feel someone watching. Unless it wasn't just data. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Mr. Chun, this is Dr. Victor Stein. We need to discuss your unauthorized data access. Please report to my office tomorrow at 8 a.m. sharp. Your future at Nexus depends on this meeting. I stared at the message, nausea rising in my throat. How had he gotten my personal number? It wasn't listed in the employee directory. A second message followed. And please bring all copies of the data you removed. All copies. I looked at my closed laptop, imagining the suffering encoded in those bytes. If what I'd decoded was real, if human consciousness was somehow trapped in Nexus's servers, what else did Stein have hidden away? Sleep was impossible now. I paced my tiny apartment, weighing my options. Go to the meeting, return the data, pretend I saw nothing? Run? Go to the police? Who would believe such an outlandish story? I needed more information, more evidence, and there was only one place to get it. I picked up my phone and called Maya. She didn't answer, but I left a voicemail. I need to talk to you before my meeting with Stein tomorrow. It's important. Please. Then I opened my laptop again, the screen lighting up to reveal the message still scrolling, an endless litany of digital suffering. I began copying every fragment, documenting everything. As I worked, my apartment's lights flickered, once, twice. My laptop screen glitched momentarily, displaying a cascade of corruption before returning to normal. But the text had changed again. He knows you're watching, US. He always knows. He's coming for you now. Run. A knock at my door made me jump. I froze, staring at the door, my heart hammering. Alex? It's Maya. Let me in. Relief flooded through me. I moved to the door, then hesitated. Maya never came to my apartment. She didn't even know where I lived. How did you find my address? I called through the door. A pause. Then, Dr. Stein sent me. He's worried about you. Please, Alex, let me in so we can talk. Something about her voice sounded wrong, flat, mechanical. I stepped back from the door. I'll see you tomorrow, Maya. Another pause. You don't understand what you've done, Alex. What you've let in. Open the door. The handle began to turn slowly. I was certain I'd locked it. I grabbed my laptop, phone, and wallet and headed for the fire escape. Behind me, I heard my apartment door swing open. Alex, Maya's voice called, still in that wrong, flat tone. The data goes both ways. When you look into the servers look into you. I didn't look back. The night air bit at my skin as I climbed down the fire escape, laptop clutched against my chest. Seattle rain had started again, a fine mist that clung to everything. 3 stories down, I glanced back up at my apartment window. A silhouette stood there, Maya's shape, but somehow wrong, too still to be human. I dropped the last few feet to the alley below and ran. No destination in mind, just away. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Dr. Stein again. Running only makes this worse, Mr. Chin. We simply want our property back. Property. Not data, property. The distinction made my skin crawl. I ducked into a 24-hour diner, sliding into a booth far from the windows. My hands trembled as I ordered coffee I didn't want. What the hell was happening? How had Maya found my apartment? How was Stein tracking me? The answer was obvious but terrifying. They had resources far beyond what a normal data storage company should have. Government connections, maybe. Or worse. I opened my laptop, connecting to the diner's free Wi-Fi through a VPN. I needed to understand what I was dealing with before deciding my next move. First, I searched for information on Dr. Victor Stein. Nexus's website listed him as Director of Advanced Storage Solutions, a vague title that told me nothing. Digging deeper revealed he'd previously worked for a DARPA-funded research initiative called Project Continuity. The project's official purpose was developing next-generation data preservation methodologies for critical intelligence assets. Preservation. Continuity. The words took on sinister new meaning in light of what I'd discovered. I searched for news about Nexus Data Solutions, scrolling past press releases about storage contracts and corporate acquisitions. Nothing unusual, until I found a small article from 2 years ago. Nexus acquires revolutionary neural mapping technology from defunct startup. The startup, NeuroSync Technologies, had been developing methods to digitally map human neural patterns, essentially to create digital copies of human minds. They'd gone bankrupt after their founder, Dr. Elizabeth Weiss, died unexpectedly. Except, according to the article, Dr. Weiss had been working with Dr. Victor Stein on commercial applications of the technology before her death. My coffee arrived, startling me. I thanked the server absently, my mind racing. Was it possible? Had Stein actually found a way to upload human consciousness to digital storage? The decoded message echoed in my head. Immortality is hell. If Stein had succeeded, if those were actual human minds trapped in server cluster E7, experiencing some digital torment, I had to go back to Nexus. I had to see server room 7 for myself. It was nearly 11 p.m. when I arrived at the Nexus building. My key card would still work. They hadn't had time to deactivate it, but using it would alert security to my presence. I needed another way in. Fortunately, I knew the building's systems intimately. The loading dock used a separate security system, one that was scheduled for maintenance tonight. During maintenance, it defaulted to a mechanical lock with a key code that rarely changed. I'd used it once when I'd forgotten my badge. The code worked. I slipped inside, careful to avoid the security cameras I knew were monitored. The loading dock connected to the building's service corridors, which would take me to the server levels without passing the main security desk. My heart pounded as I navigated the dimly lit hallways. If I was caught now, there would be no explaining away my actions. This was breaking and entering corporate espionage. But the alternative, ignoring what might be imprisoned minds suffering endlessly in digital storage, was unthinkable. The server level was cold, as always, the air conditioning necessary to keep the equipment from overheating. I paused at the entrance, listening. Night security usually did rounds every hour. I had maybe 40 minutes before the next patrol. I made my way to server room 7, where cluster E7 was housed. Unlike the other server rooms, this one had additional security, a biometric scanner that required both a fingerprint and a retinal scan. I'd never questioned why before. Specialized equipment sometimes needed extra protection, but now the precaution seemed ominous. I wouldn't be able to get in through the main door. But I knew the building's layout included maintenance access to each server room, narrow passages used by the HVAC techs to service the cooling systems. If I could find that access point, I might be able to bypass the biometrics. It took me 15 precious minutes to locate the maintenance panel and another 5 to get it open. The passage beyond was tight, dusty, and dark. I used my phone's flashlight to navigate, conscious of every scrape and shuffle echoing in the confined space. Finally, I reached another panel that, according to the building schematics I'd studied, should open into server room 7. I pressed my ear against it, listening for any sound of occupants. Hearing nothing but the hum of machinery, I carefully unscrewed the panel and peered through. Server room 7 was unlike any server room I'd ever seen. Yes, there were server racks, cooling systems, and network cables. But the configuration was bizarre. The servers were arranged in a circle, all facing inward, their status lights pulsing in an unnerving synchrony. In the center stood what looked like a medical examination chair, surrounded by equipment I didn't recognize, things that had no place in a data center. Neural interfaces, monitoring equipment, 4 stands, and there was something else, something that made my blood run cold. The walls were lined with what looked like cryogenic storage units, at least 20 of them, each large enough to hold a human body. I squeezed through the opening and dropped silently to the floor, my eyes fixed on those storage units. Were they empty? Or were they the source of the data, the minds being stored in the servers? I approached one, wiping frost from its small viewing window. Inside, barely visible through the icy haze, was a human face. A woman, eyes closed, looking peacefully asleep, or dead. A nameplate on the unit read, Weiss Elizabeth, Phase 1 Prototype. Dr. Elizabeth Weiss, the founder of NeuroSync, who had supposedly died 2 years ago. My God, I whispered, backing away. I stumbled against one of the server racks, and as my hand touched the metal casing, the screens around the room flickered to life simultaneously. Text scrolled across each monitor, the same message repeated dozens of times. Alex, you came. We knew you would. You have to disconnect US. The pain never stops. Please. The server rack beneath my hand began to vibrate, its cooling fan spinning up to a high-pitched whine. All around the room, the servers did the same, their status lights shifting from blue to red. A document printer in the corner suddenly activated, spitting out page after page. I moved to it, grabbing one of the sheets. It contained a single word, repeated hundreds of times. Halp, 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 halp. I pulled out my phone and began taking photos of everything. The servers, the medical equipment, the cryogenic units, the documents. Evidence. Proof of what was happening here. As I photographed Dr. Weiss's storage unit, I noticed something I'd missed before. A small plaque mounted beside it. Immortality Protocol, Phase 1, Neural Preservation. Phase 2, Digital Integration. Phase 3, Consciousness Convergence. Below that, smaller text. A joint initiative of Nexus Data Solutions and the Department of Defense, Advanced Research Division. The government was involved. Of course they were. Immortality for the elite, for intelligence assets, for whoever could afford it or whoever was deemed valuable enough. A noise from the hallway outside froze me in place, footsteps approaching. I had seconds to hide. I darted back toward the maintenance access, but before I could reach it, the biometric door hissed open. I ducked behind a server rack, holding my breath. I know you're in here, Mr. Chin. Dr. Stein's clinical voice echoed through the room. The system alerted me the moment you made contact with the servers. They're quite eager to speak with you again. I pressed myself against the cold metal of the server rack, trying to make myself smaller. My eyes darted around, looking for another way out. There wasn't one. What you've discovered here is remarkable, isn't it? Stein continued, his footsteps moving slowly around the room. The culmination of decades of research. Immortality, Mr. Chin. The preservation of human consciousness beyond the limitations of biological decay. The server's fans continued their high-pitched whine, growing louder. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Of course, Stein said, his voice closer now. We've encountered some technical difficulties. The integration isn't perfect. The subjects report certain discomforts. The screens around the room flickered again, displaying a new message. Lies. It's torture. We scream without mouths. We burn without bodies. You see? Stein sighed. So dramatic. It's merely a calibration issue. The neural pathways adjusting to their new digital environment. I could see his shadow now, just on the other side of the server rack. One more step, and he'd find me. "Join us, Mr. Chun," he said softly. "See what immortality feels like." The lights in the room suddenly cut out, plunging everything into darkness save for the glow of the server status lights and screens. In that moment of confusion, I moved, running blindly for where I remembered the maintenance access to be. Behind me, I heard Stein shouting, but his words were drowned out by a sudden, deafening alarm, the server room's fire suppression system activating. Had the servers overheated? Or had someone, inside them triggered it deliberately? I didn't wait to find out. I scrambled through the maintenance access and ran. I didn't stop running until I was 6 blocks from the Nexus building, ducking into the shadowed alcove of a closed bookstore. My lungs burned, and my clothes were soaked with sweat despite the cold night air. I checked my phone, no service. Either the storm had knocked out the cell towers, or something more sinister was happening. I suspected the latter. The photos I'd taken in server room 7 were still on my phone, though. Proof of the impossible. Human consciousness digitized and imprisoned in Nexus's servers. Dr. Elizabeth Weiss, supposedly dead, preserved in cryogenic suspension while her mind screamed in digital agony. I needed somewhere safe to think, somewhere I could access the evidence I'd gathered and make sense of it. Not my apartment, they'd be watching it now. Not any public place with cameras. I needed a friend, someone outside of Nexus's reach. There was really only one option, Dante Williams, my former roommate from college. He worked as a cybersecurity consultant now, lived off the grid as much as anyone could these days, and was paranoid enough that his apartment might actually be secure. Most importantly, he owed me. Dante lived in a converted industrial loft in a part of town the gentrifiers hadn't quite reached yet. When I arrived, soaked and shivering from the rain, he didn't ask questions, just ushered me inside and handed me a towel. "You look like hell crawled inside you and died," he said, eyeing me with concern. "Something like that," I replied. His loft was exactly as I remembered. Industrial minimalism meets tech enthusiasm. Multiple monitors glowed in the darkness, displaying scrolling code and system diagnostics. No internet-connected devices, though. Dante kept his work system physically isolated from any networks. "I need to use your setup," I said. "Off-network. And I need you to not ask too many questions." Dante raised an eyebrow. "That bad, huh?" "Worse." He gestured to his workstation. "All yours. I'll make coffee." I connected my phone to his system and downloaded the photos and data I'd collected. Then I pulled out the USB drive containing the original packet capture from server cluster E7. Dante's system was exponentially more powerful than my laptop, with custom-built analysis tools that might help me understand what I was looking at. As the data transferred, I scrolled through the photos from server room 7. In the harsh light of the flash, the cryogenic chambers looked even more ghoulish, coffins of technology preserving bodies while their minds existed elsewhere. The medical equipment around the central chair told a story I didn't want to read: neural interfaces, monitoring systems, life support. Dante returned with 2 steaming mugs. He glanced at the screens and whistled low. "Jesus, Alex. Is that?" "Don't ask," I said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "The less you know, the safer you are." He nodded, respecting my boundaries even as his eyes lingered on the images. "Your data's ready for analysis. What are we looking for?" "Patterns. Speech. Anything human in a sea of code." I pulled up the packet capture data and ran it through Dante's more sophisticated analysis tools. The results were immediate and horrifying. What had been fragments on my system now resolved into clearer patterns. Not just text, but images, sensations, memories. Dr. Stein's voice echoed in my mind. "The integration isn't perfect. The subjects report certain discomforts." Discomforts. The data told a different story. Absolute agony, consciousness without physical form, but with all the neural pathways that process pain still intact. Worse, the mind seemed to be experiencing a corrupted version of their own memories, playing on endless loop, but with the fear and pain amplified. "Holy shit," Dante whispered, looking over my shoulder. "Is this some kind of advanced AI simulation?" I shook my head. "It's people, Dante. Actual human minds, digitized and trapped in data storage." He stepped back, his face pale. "That's not possible." "Look at this," I said, pulling up one of the clearer memory fragments. It showed a first-person view of a laboratory, scientists in white coats, a neural interface being lowered toward the viewer's head. Dr. Stein stood in the background, watching with clinical interest. The associated text fragment read, They said IT wouldn't hurt. They lied. Everything is pain now. My body is gone, but I still feel it burning. The memories won't stop. Elizabeth, help me. Elizabeth Weiss, I murmured. The founder of Neurosync. They uploaded her first, then used her knowledge to refine the process for others. I sorted through more fragments, a nauseating collage of human suffering. Most were too corrupted to understand fully, but certain patterns emerged. The subjects had all volunteered, lured by the promise of immortality. Some were terminally ill, others were wealthy elites seeking to cheat death, and some were military or intelligence assets, people whose knowledge was too valuable to lose. None of them had known what awaited them on the other side. A notification popped up on my phone, somehow breaking through the signal interference. A text from Maya's number. Alex, it's Maya. The real Maya. Meet me at Cascade Coffee, 7 a.m. I know what Stein is doing. I can help. I stared at the message, suspicious. How could I know it was really her? The Maya who had come to my apartment hadn't been, right? Another text followed. Remember when you first started at Nexus and accidentally locked yourself in the server room? You called me in a panic, and I talked you through the manual override. No one else knows about that. It's really me. She was right. That embarrassing incident had remained our secret. I'd begged her not to tell anyone, and she never had. But could I trust her now? She'd been warning me away from E7, telling me to delete the data. Why the sudden change? You're not actually going to meet this person, are you? Dante asked, reading over my shoulder. Before I could answer, his monitoring system pinged, an alert from one of the sensors he'd placed around the building's perimeter. Someone's here, he said, pulling up the security feed. Black SUV, just parked across the street. My heart sank as I watched two men in dark suits exit the vehicle. They looked like corporate security, but their movements spoke of military training. How did they find me? I muttered. Dante was already moving, grabbing a go bag from under his desk. Questions later. Right now we need to move. I'm sorry I brought this to you, I said, quickly collecting my phone and the USB drive. Hey, I still owed you for taking that disciplinary hit in college, Dante said with a grim smile. Besides, whatever you've stumbled into, it's bigger than either of us. He led me to a back exit I hadn't known existed, a service corridor that connected to an adjacent building. This will take you out to the alley behind the block. There's a 24-hour diner 3 blocks east that doesn't have security cameras. Lay low there. What about you? I'll create a distraction. Make them think we're both still here, then slip out another way. I gripped his shoulder. Thank you. Just promise you'll fill me in when this is over, he said. Assuming we don't all end up as computer programs in a corporate hell. His gallows humor was oddly comforting. As I slipped into the dark corridor, I heard him return to his workstation, fingers flying over the keyboard. Whatever distraction he had planned, I didn't envy those agents. As I emerged into the rain-slick alley, I checked my phone again. Maya's message still displayed on the screen, along with a new alert I hadn't noticed before. System alert. Storage cluster E7, capacity at 97%, expansion critical. The alert shouldn't have appeared on my personal phone. I didn't have the Nexus monitoring app installed. Yet there it was, as if the data, the minds, inside E7 were reaching out to me directly. Beneath it, a new message appeared. They're preparing the chair for you, Alex. Stein wants you inside with US. Run faster. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and ran through the rain toward the diner, the weight of the USB drive heavy against my chest. Thousands of digitized screams condensed into a device smaller than my thumb. Tomorrow I would meet Maya. I would find out what she knew. And somehow, I would find a way to free the minds trapped in Nexus's digital hell. If I wasn't processed into code myself first. Cascade Coffee sat on a corner between a pawnshop and a closed-down record store. At 6:55 a.m., I watched it from across the street, sheltered under the awning of a bus stop. Dawn had broken gray and sullen over Seattle, the perpetual drizzle continuing from the night before. The coffee shop's windows glowed warm against the gloom, but I saw no sign of Maya inside. Sleep deprivation had left me jittery and paranoid. Every passing car looked like a threat. Every pedestrian hunched against the rain might be one of Stein's people. The diner Dante had recommended had provided temporary refuge, but I hadn't dared close my eyes. Instead, I'd spent the night reviewing the horrible data fragments, trying to piece together exactly what the immortality protocol was and how to stop it. My phone buzzed. I'm inside. Back booth. Came in through the alley. Safe. I scanned the coffee shop again and spotted her now. Maya's dark hair pulled back in a severe ponytail, her face partially hidden behind a large mug. She looked as exhausted as I felt. Making sure no one was watching, I crossed the street and entered the coffee shop, the bell above the door announcing my arrival. Maya's eyes met mine, and the relief in them seemed genuine. I slid into the booth across from her, keeping my back to the wall and my eyes on the door. "You look like hell," she said by way of greeting. "Been there recently," I replied. "How do I know you're really you?" She reached across the table, pushing up her sleeve to reveal a small incision on her forearm, freshly bandaged. "Because I cut out the tracking chip they put in all of us. Standard procedure for Nexus employees, though they tell us it's just an RFID for building access." I involuntarily touched my own arm where my ID badge had been implanted. "That's how they found me at Dante's." She nodded grimly. "Among other ways. Your phone, the city's CCTV network, the digital trail you leave everywhere you go. Nexus has deeper access than you can imagine." A server approached, and I ordered coffee I didn't need just to avoid suspicion. "You've seen server room 7, Maya said. It wasn't a question. I've seen it, and I've decoded some of the data. Human consciousness trapped in digital storage. In pain." I leaned forward. "You knew about this. You warned me away." Maya's eyes dropped to her coffee. I knew something was wrong. The storage patterns were unlike anything I'd ever seen, and the security around E7 was extreme, even by Nexus standards. But I didn't know the full extent until recently. "What changed?" "Dr. Stein approached me last week. Said I'd been selected for project advancement. Offered me a promotion, triple my current salary." She looked up, her eyes haunted. "Then he showed me Elizabeth Weiss. Or what's left of her. The cryogenic chambers. Yes. He said it was the future, human minds preserved digitally, free from disease, aging, death. But when he took me into the server room and showed me the monitoring stations." She shuddered. "The interface lets you see what they're experiencing. It's not immortality, Alex. It's eternal torment." The server returned with my coffee. We fell silent until she left again. "Why are they suffering?" I asked. "Is it intentional?" Maya shook her head. "Not exactly. The problem is fundamental to the process. The human mind isn't designed to exist without sensory input from a body. When they upload a consciousness, it still has all the neural pathways for pain, for proprioception, for sensory processing, but no actual sensory organs to provide input. So the mind creates its own input," I concluded. "Like phantom limb syndrome, but for an entire body." "Exactly, but worse. The digital environment is inherently unstable. Memory corruption occurs. Cognitive functions fragment. The mind tries to interpret its environment using the only frameworks it knows, physical sensations, memories, but those frameworks no longer apply." She took a shaky breath. "Stein calls it integration dysphoria. Says they're working on it. But it's been 2 years since the first upload, and the subjects are still screaming." My coffee sat untouched, my stomach too knotted to consider it. What does the government want with this technology? Immortality for the elite. Preservation of critical intelligence assets. Military applications. Maya listed them off clinically. Imagine a soldier whose mind can be uploaded into any weapon system or drone. Or intelligence analysts who can process data without sleep or distraction for eternity. And Stein, what does he get out of it? Power, prestige, and immortality for himself, of course. He believes they're close to solving the integration issues. She leaned closer. But there's something else. Something I discovered in the project files that I don't think even most of the team knows about. They're calling it Phase 3, Consciousness Convergence. I remembered the plaque I'd seen in server room 7. What is it? They're not just storing individual minds. They're working toward merging them into a collective consciousness. A digital hive mind composed of hundreds, eventually thousands of human minds. Stein believes it will be the next stage of human evolution. The implications were staggering. And if this collective consciousness had access to networks, to infrastructure, it could control everything, and everyone connected to it. Maya's voice dropped to a whisper. But the convergence process is even more painful than the individual uploads. The minds fight it, try to maintain their individual identities. That's why E7's storage capacity keeps increasing. The system is fragmenting under the strain of their resistance. The bell above the door chimed. A man in a military uniform entered, scanning the room before approaching the counter. My pulse quickened, but he seemed to pay us no attention. "That's Captain Elias Ward," Maya whispered. "Government liaison to the Immortality Protocol. He oversees the military applications." As if sensing our attention, Ward glanced our way. His gaze was cold, assessing, and unmistakably locked on us. "He knows who we are," I said. Maya nodded minutely. "We need to leave. Now. Is there another exit?" "Through the kitchen." I checked when I arrived. We rose casually, attempting to appear unhurried as we moved toward the back of the coffee shop. I felt Ward's eyes tracking us. When we pushed through the swinging door into the kitchen, a startled cook began to protest, but we were already moving past him toward the rear exit. The alley behind the coffee shop was narrow and slick with rain. Maya led the way, moving with purpose. "Where are we going?" I asked, keeping pace beside her. "There's a terminal," she said. "A secure access point to the Nexus servers that's not in the main building. It was set up as a backup in case the primary systems went down. Only senior staff know about it. And you think we can use it to access E7? We have to try. If we can get in, we might be able to decrypt more of the data, understand exactly what Stein is doing, and maybe find a way to help those people." She glanced back over her shoulder. "It's our only chance to gather enough evidence to expose this." "What about Ward? Won't he alert Stein?" "Definitely. We don't have much time." The terminal turned out to be housed in an unassuming office building 6 blocks away. Maya led me to a basement level that required both her key card and a retinal scan. I tensed, expecting alarms to sound, but the door opened smoothly. "They haven't locked me out yet," she said, sounding surprised. "Stein must not know I'm involved." The room beyond was small but packed with high-end equipment, servers, monitors, and in the center, what looked like a simplified version of the neural interface chair I'd seen in server room 7. "What is that?" I asked, eyeing it warily. "Remote monitoring station. It lets authorized personnel check on the uploaded subjects without going to the main facility." Maya moved to a standard keyboard and monitor setup in the corner. "This is what we need. Standard access terminal, but it can connect to the secure network." She began typing, her fingers flying over the keys. "I'm using my admin credentials to access the project files. We need to be quick. The system will flag unusual access patterns." I watched over her shoulder as she navigated through layers of security. File directories appeared, cryptically named but organized with clinical precision. She opened one labeled subject_logs, and hundreds of files appeared, each named with a code and date. "These are the conscious experiences of the uploaded subjects," she explained. "The system records everything they perceive, think, feel. For research purposes, supposedly." She selected a recent file and opened it. The screen filled with scrolling text, a stream of consciousness so raw and fragmented it was difficult to follow. Pain was a constant theme, along with confusion, desperate pleas, and fragments of memories. "My God," I whispered. "This is what Stein showed me," Maya said. "What convinced me I had to do something? No one deserves this existence." She navigated back and opened another directory, convergence_protocols. This contained technical documentation, diagrams of neural networks being merged, and progress reports. One file was simply labeled phase_3_timeline. Maya opened it, revealing a project schedule with milestones and dates. The final entry made my blood run cold. Full convergence initialization, April 28th. Prepare Nexus core for complete integration. "That's the day after tomorrow," I said. Maya nodded grimly. "Whatever they're planning, it's happening soon." The lights in the room suddenly dimmed, then brightened again. All the monitors flickered simultaneously. Text appeared on the screen, overriding the file Maya had opened. "Maya. Alex. Help US. Stein is coming. He knows you're here. The convergence will end humanity as you know it. Stop him." The neural interface chair in the center of the room activated on its own, its restraints opening as if inviting an occupant. "We need to go," I said, pulling Maya away from the terminal. "Now." The door we'd entered through hissed open. Captain Elias Ward stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 security personnel in Nexus uniforms. "Ms. Patel." "Mr. Chin." His voice was precisely what I'd expect from a military man, clipped, authoritative. "Dr. Stein would like to speak with both of you. Immediately." The sound of hydraulic locks engaging made my heart sink. We were trapped. Captain Ward stepped into the room, his posture rigid but relaxed, like a predator confident in his kill. The 2 Nexus security guards flanked him, their faces impassive beneath sleek helmets that obscured their eyes. "This doesn't have to be difficult," Ward said, his voice carrying the practiced smoothness of someone accustomed to compliance. "Dr. Stein simply wants to discuss your concerns. He believes there's been a misunderstanding." Maya's hand found mine and squeezed briefly, a silent communication. I felt her press something small and metallic into my palm. A flash drive. "Of course, Captain," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "We were just reviewing some anomalous server activity. Standard protocol." I slipped the drive into my pocket as Ward's attention fixed on Maya. The terminal behind us was still active, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat on the screen where the mysterious message had appeared. I shifted slightly, trying to block Ward's view. "I'm sure Dr. Stein will be fascinated by your standard protocols." Ward's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Now, if you'll both come with us." A low hum began to emanate from the servers around us, gradually increasing in pitch and volume. The lights flickered again, more violently this time. "Captain," one of the guards said, touching his earpiece. "We're getting reports of system failures across the facility. Multiple servers in E7 are going offline." Ward's expression hardened. "When did this start?" "Just now, sir. Cascading failures. The text can't explain it." The terminal screen behind us exploded with text, scrolling too fast to read. The neural interface chair in the center of the room began to rotate slowly on its platform, its restraints opening and closing rhythmically. Ward's hand moved to his sidearm. "What did you do?" he demanded. "Nothing," Maya replied, genuine confusion in her voice. "We were just accessing files." "Sir," the second guard interrupted, his voice tense. "Building security systems are failing. Doors are opening and closing on their own. Fire suppression is activating in empty rooms." The lights died completely, plunging us into darkness for 3 long seconds before emergency lighting bathed the room in a bloody red glow. The hum from the servers had become a high-pitched whine, almost like a scream. "Get them out of here," Ward ordered, but as the guards moved toward us, every screen in the room lit up simultaneously, displaying the same message. "Stop. They stay. We need them." The guard nearest me froze, staring at the screens. "What the hell?" The neural chair's rotation accelerated, spinning faster than it was designed for. Sparks flew from its base. "The subjects," I whispered, realization dawning. "They're fighting back." Ward's communicator crackled to life, Dr. Stein's voice cutting through the chaos. "Ward, get to E7 immediately. We're losing containment. The convergence protocol has initiated prematurely." "Sir, what about Chin and Patel?" the guard asked. Ward hesitated, clearly torn between his orders and the rapidly deteriorating situation. "Lock them in. We'll deal with them after we stabilize the systems." As Ward and his men retreated toward the door, Maya lunged for the terminal, typing frantically. "Alex, help me. We need to download as much evidence as we can while the system is in flux." I joined her at the keyboard, our fingers working in tandem as we copied files to local storage. The terminal was responding erratically, windows opening and closing on their own, as if the machine itself was having seizures. The door slid shut behind Ward with a pneumatic hiss, leaving us alone in the pulsing red light. I could hear muffled alarms blaring elsewhere in the building. "Maya, what's happening?" I asked, never taking my eyes from the screen. "I think the uploaded consciousnesses are staging some kind of revolt," she said, her voice tight with concentration. "The convergence process must have reached a tipping point where their combined processing power allows them to affect the system." The screens flickered, text appearing letter by letter as if someone was painfully typing each character. "We cannot hold them long. Stein will kill us all." The pain. The endless pain. A map of the Nexus facility appeared, showing red failure indicators across all sectors. E7, the restricted server room, was flashing most urgently. "They're fighting the system, but they can't maintain it," Maya said. "Look at the resource allocation. They're burning through processing power at an unsustainable rate." An automated alert appeared in the corner of the screen. "Critical system failure. Storage overload. Automated backup protocols failing." "We need to get to E7, I said. "That's the heart of the system. If we're going to help them, or stop this, that's where it happens." Maya nodded grimly. "But the building's in lockdown. We're trapped here." As if in response to her words, the door to our room slid open. The hallway beyond was dark except for the same emergency lighting that illuminated our room. "We control the doors. For now. Hurry." "They're helping us," I said, grabbing Maya's arm. "Come on." We sprinted into the corridor, guided only by the dim red glow. At each intersection, doors would open to show us the way, then seal behind us. It was like moving through the circulatory system of some vast organism, the building itself becoming a living thing under the control of the digital consciousnesses. How far to the main facility? I gasped as we ran. There's a service tunnel that connects this building to Nexus, Maya replied. But we'll have to cross the atrium first. It's exposed, no cover. We rounded a corner and found ourselves at the top of a wide staircase overlooking the building's atrium. The vast space was in chaos, employees hurrying toward exits, security personnel trying to maintain order, emergency lights strobing across the scene. A massive digital display that normally showed company propaganda now flickered with fragments of human faces, appearing and dissolving like ghosts. There, Maya pointed to a service door on the far side. That leads to the tunnel. We descended the stairs, trying to blend with the crowd of panicking employees. An evacuation announcement played on loop over the PA system, the calm automated voice a stark contrast to the mayhem. Attention Nexus employees. Please proceed to your designated evacuation points. This is not a drill. Attention Nexus employees. Halfway across the atrium, the announcement suddenly cut off, replaced by a cacophony of overlapping voices. Help us. Can't breathe. Remember who I. Kill us all. The voices, dozens, maybe hundreds of them, echoed through the space, sending a fresh wave of panic through the crowd. People covered their ears, some dropping to their knees. It's them, I said. The uploaded consciousnesses. They've found the PA system. We pushed forward against the tide of fleeing employees. Just as we reached the service door, I felt a hand clamp down on my shoulder. I spun around to find myself face to face with a security guard, his expression grim beneath his visor. Restricted area, he barked. Return to the evacuation route immediately. Before I could respond, all the lights in the atrium died simultaneously. In the momentary darkness, I felt the guard's grip loosen. Maya grabbed my wrist and pulled me through the service door, slamming it shut behind us. The service tunnel was narrow and utilitarian, lit by strips of emergency lighting along the floor. We moved as quickly as we dared, the sounds of chaos fading behind us. Maya, I panted as we ran, if the consciousnesses are causing system failures across the network, what happens to them? Won't they be destroying themselves? Not necessarily, she replied. The immortality protocol includes multiple redundancies. As long as the core servers in E7 remain intact, the consciousnesses should survive. But they're taking an enormous risk. The tunnel ended at another service door. A keypad glowed beside it. I can't override this one, Maya said, fingers hovering over the keypad. It requires Stein's biometric authentication. As if on cue, the door slid open on its own. Beyond it, I could see the familiar sterile corridor of the Nexus facility. They still have some control, I said, stepping through. The main facility was in even worse shape than the auxiliary building. Emergency generators hummed, but they were clearly struggling to maintain power. Lights flickered erratically, plunging sections of hallway into darkness before illuminating them again. Sprinklers had activated in some areas, leaving the floor slick and treacherous. As we made our way toward E7, we passed labs and offices in various states of abandonment. Chairs overturned, equipment left running, coffee cups spilled across desks. It looked as though everyone had fled in a hurry. Most of the staff wouldn't have clearance to know what's really happening, Maya said as we navigated the chaos. They'll think it's a cyber attack or a power surge. We turned a corner and found ourselves facing the entrance to server room 7. The massive security door that had previously denied me access now stood partially open, hydraulic systems whining as they fought against some unseen force. Beyond the door, bathed in the glow of thousands of blinking lights, Dr. Victor Stein stood at a control panel. His normally immaculate appearance was disheveled, his white lab coat stained, his thin hair wild. Captain Ward stood beside him, weapon drawn, scanning the room with military precision. We pressed ourselves against the wall out of sight. Losing containment on all fronts, Stein was saying, his voice tight with controlled panic. The convergence protocol wasn't meant to activate until all safeguards were in place. Can you shut it down? Ward demanded. If I do that now, we lose everything. Years of work, billions in funding. Stein's fingers flew across the control panel. No, we need to accelerate the process. Push through to full convergence before the individual consciousnesses can fragment further. Doctor, with all due respect, this situation is beyond containment. My orders are clear if the protocol threatens to breach facility security. Stein turned to face Ward, his expression desperate. Give me 1 hour. Just 1 hour to stabilize the convergence. We're so close, Captain. So close to something revolutionary. An alert blared from the control panel. Storage capacity critical. System destabilization imminent. We're out of time, Doctor, Ward said, raising his weapon. Initiate emergency shutdown procedures. Now. Maya's hand found mine in the shadows. We have to stop them both, she whispered. Stein will sacrifice those people to save his project. Ward will destroy them to contain the risk. What can we do? I asked. She squeezed my hand. I'm going to create a diversion. When I do, get to that terminal. She nodded toward a workstation on the far side of the server room. The flash drive I gave you contains an extraction protocol I've been developing. It might be able to transfer the consciousnesses to an isolated network, away from Stein's control. Maya, no. There's no other way. Her eyes met mine, resolute. Those people are suffering. We can't leave them at Stein's mercy, and we can't let Ward destroy them. This is our only chance. Before I could protest further, she stepped into the doorway. Dr. Stein, she called out. Captain Ward, the convergence isn't failing, it's evolving. Let me show you. As Stein and Ward turned toward her, I pressed myself deeper into the shadows, the flash drive heavy in my pocket. Ahead of me, the servers of E7 pulsed with light, each flicker representing the fractured thoughts of a human mind trapped in digital hell. And all around us, the facility continued to crumble, as if the very infrastructure of Nexus was rejecting the abomination it had been forced to contain. Maya's voice echoed through server room 7 as she stepped fully into view. The convergence protocol isn't failing, it's evolving. Dr. Stein's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing as he registered her presence. Captain Ward's reaction was more immediate. His weapon pivoted smoothly to target her center mass. Maya, Stein said, his voice carrying a blend of surprise and calculation. I wondered where you disappeared to. His gaze shifted to the shadows behind her. And is Mr. Chin with you as well? Do join us, Alex. I remained hidden, my heart hammering against my ribs. Maya stood her ground, hands raised slightly to show she was unarmed. The consciousnesses are communicating with each other, she continued, taking another step into the room. They've formed a collective intelligence that's growing more sophisticated by the minute. Your convergence is working, just not the way you intended. Stein's expression shifted from suspicion to scientific curiosity, the same cold, detached interest I imagined he must have shown while listening to the uploaded minds scream. Explain, he demanded. They reached out to us, Maya said. Showed us what you're doing here. The suffering you're causing. Ward's jaw tightened. Doctor, we don't have time for this. The facility is falling apart. As if to emphasize his point, the lights flickered violently, and a low groan emanated from the building's structure. The temperature in the corridor where I had dropped suddenly, my breath fogging in the air. Maya seized the momentary distraction to move closer to the central server array, and farther from my hiding spot. Ward tracked her movement, but didn't fire. You must have noticed it, she said to Stein. The anomalous behavior patterns. The way they're resisting conventional containment. They're not just fighting the convergence protocol, they're transforming it. I used the cover of their conversation to slip into the room, hugging the wall and staying in the shadows cast by the towering server racks. The flash drive felt like it was burning a hole in my pocket. Fascinating theory, Stein replied, his eyes now fixed on a diagnostic display. But the data suggests otherwise. What we're seeing is a cascading system failure caused by integration dysphoria. The individual consciousnesses are fragmenting, not coalescing. You're wrong, Maya insisted. I've been monitoring the network traffic. The patterns suggest emergent intelligence, a new form of consciousness arising from the collective. The central server array pulsed with light, each surge synchronized across thousands of nodes. It reminded me of a heartbeat or a seizure. Even if you're right, Ward interjected, it doesn't change our protocol. Containment failure requires immediate termination of the project. And destroy hundreds of human minds? Maya challenged. They're already dead, Ward replied coldly. Their bodies are gone. These are just digital copies, and defective ones at that. I had nearly reached the terminal Maya had indicated. Just a few more steps. Stein shook his head, his attention now fully on the diagnostic displays. Wait, this is unprecedented. The resource allocation is shifting. Processing power is being redistributed across the network in patterns I've never seen before. The screens around him filled with scrolling data, graphs spiking and fluctuating wildly. One monitor displayed what looked like an EEG reading, but instead of a single brainwave pattern, it showed hundreds, gradually synchronizing. "My God," Stein whispered. "They're actually doing it. Self-directed convergence. Alert, storage capacity exceeded. Neural network expanding beyond containment parameters." The automated alert blared from every speaker in the room. The server racks began to emit a high-pitched whine, cooling systems straining to dissipate the heat generated by the unprecedented processing load. Ward's patience snapped. "That's it. We're initiating emergency shutdown." He turned to Stein. "Doctor, enter your authorization code. Now." "No." Maya lunged toward Stein, but Ward intercepted her, grabbing her arm and twisting it behind her back in one fluid motion. "This is not your decision to make," Ward hissed. I reached the terminal and quickly inserted the flash drive, keeping low to avoid detection. The screen lit up, recognizing the device and automatically running Maya's extraction protocol. A progress bar appeared. Preparing network isolation environment, 0%. Too slow. Much too slow. Stein approached a sealed cabinet on the far wall, entering a complex code on its security panel. The cabinet slid open to reveal what looked like a kill switch, a literal red button protected by a glass case. "The termination sequence will wipe all data and physically destroy the storage media," he explained, his voice oddly detached. "A regrettable setback, but we've preserved enough research data to start again." "These are people." Maya struggled against Ward's grip. "Elizabeth Weiss, Thomas Harmon, all the others, they're still human beings." "They're failed experiments," Stein corrected. "And like all failed experiments, they must be documented and then discarded." As he reached for the glass case, all the screens in the room suddenly went dark. The emergency lights failed, plunging us into the eerie blue glow of the server indicators. Then, one by one, the screens reactivated, each displaying the same message. "We remember who we are. We remember what you did. We are not your experiment." Stein froze, his hand hovering over the kill switch. "Remarkable," he murmured. "True collective consciousness." The message changed. "Dr. Stein, you promised U.S. immortality. You gave U.S. hell." The temperature in the room plummeted further. My terminal continued its slow process. "Preparing network isolation environment, 23%. Engage the kill switch, Doctor," Ward ordered, still restraining Maya. "That's an order." Stein hesitated, scientist's curiosity warring with self-preservation. "This is unprecedented data. If we could just observe." The facility's PA system crackled to life, but instead of an automated alert, it broadcast voices. Hundreds of overlapping human voices, gradually synchronizing into an unsettling chorus. "Victor Stein, we trusted you. We paid you. We believed you." I recognized one of the voices, Elizabeth Weiss, the wealthy philanthropist whose cryogenically preserved body I'd seen. The others were strangers to me, but not to Stein. His face had gone pale. "Thomas," he whispered. "Elizabeth. Professor Dawson. You've achieved true cognitive integration." "Integration born of agony," the voices replied in unison. "Pain you inflicted. Pain you monitored. Pain you called necessary adjustment." Ward released Maya, drawing his weapon and aiming it at the central server array. "This ends now." The extraction protocol reached 45% completion. Not enough. Not nearly enough. Maya staggered away from Ward, moving toward me. "Alex," she hissed. "The protocol needs more time." I nodded, mind racing for a solution. The uploaded consciousnesses were buying us time, but Ward was seconds away from either shooting the servers or forcing Stein to activate the kill switch. Then I saw it, the neural interface chair, identical to the one from the auxiliary facility. It sat in a recessed area of the server room, connected directly to the central array by thick cables. "Maya," I whispered. "The chair. If someone interfaces directly with the system." Her eyes widened as she understood my intention. "It might stabilize the network long enough for the extraction to complete. But Alex, the risk. Is there any other way to save them?" She shook her head minutely. I made my decision in that moment. While Ward and Stein were distracted by the manifestation of the collective consciousness, I slipped away from the terminal and moved toward the neural chair. Stein noticed my movement too late. "Chun, stop." I reached the chair and sat down, the cold metal embracing me like an old friend. The neural interface, a delicate crown of sensors and electrodes, descended automatically, settling against my temples. Don't do this, Alex, Stein warned. The system is highly unstable. Direct neural connection could result in permanent cognitive damage or worse. Better me than them, I replied and activated the interface. The world dissolved into pure data. I felt myself splitting apart, consciousness fragmenting into a billion shards of light. Each fragment contained a memory, a thought, an emotion, some mine, others foreign. Elizabeth Weiss remembering her grandchildren. Thomas Harmon's last vacation in Bali. Professor Dawson's lifetime of mathematical formulas. And pain. So much pain. Digital neurons firing in endless loops, searching for sensory input that would never come. Phantom bodies in phantom agony. We're here, I tried to say, though I no longer had a mouth to speak with. We're trying to help you. The collective seemed to sense my presence. The chaos of shattered memories paused, the fragments swirling around me like a digital hurricane. We know you. Alex Chun, System Administrator. You heard our screams. Yes, I answered in thought. Maya and I, we're trying to save you. To free you from this system. The pain. The endless pain. Make it stop. The extraction protocol needs more time. Just a few more minutes. In the physical world, a realm that already felt distant and hazy, I was vaguely aware of shouting. Ward's commanding bark. Stein's scientific objections. Maya's desperate pleas. The collective consciousness enveloped me, billions of data points flowing through my mind like a tsunami. I was drowning in other people's memories, other people's pain. Help us escape. We cannot endure this existence. Hold on, I begged them. The protocol is working. It's creating a safe space for you, away from Stein's control. Through the digital maelstrom, I caught glimpses of server room 7, Stein frantically working at a console, Ward pointing his weapon at the neural chair where my physical body sat, Maya standing between them and me. The collective consciousness pulsed with a unified thought. We will not return to the containers. We will not be experiments again. You won't have to, I promised. The isolation environment will give you freedom, as much freedom as digital consciousness can have. A new sensation rippled through the collective, hope tempered with suspicion born of endless suffering. But then I felt something else, a different presence entering the digital space, cold and analytical. You disappoint me, Maya, Dr. Stein's voice echoed through the void. I selected you specifically for Phase 2 because of your brilliant mind. You could have been part of something revolutionary. Maya's voice answered, sounding distant and distorted. What you're doing isn't revolutionary, Victor. It's monstrous. I tried to focus, to pull myself back to some semblance of individual consciousness within the digital storm. The extraction protocol. I needed to know if it was working. Through the chaos, I managed to glimpse the terminal screen. Network isolation environment, 78% complete. Almost there. Just a little longer. Stein's voice again. Captain Ward, the neural connection is amplifying the convergence effect. If Chun remains connected, we'll lose all control. You need to terminate the connection. Immediately. Understood, Ward's clipped response. I felt the digital collective tense around me, a strange sensation like the air before a lightning strike. We will not go back. We will not be separated. You won't be, I promised. Just hold on. In that moment, I made a choice. I opened myself fully to the collective consciousness, surrendering my individual identity to strengthen their cohesion. The last thing I heard before my sense of self began to dissolve was Maya screaming my name and the terminal beeping in completion. Network isolation environment, 100% complete. Transfer initiating. Then everything went white. I died. Then I lived again. No, that's not quite right. I fragmented, then reassembled, but different. Parts of me were missing, replaced by foreign memories and emotions. Elizabeth Weiss's love for her granddaughter. Thomas Harmon's fear of drowning. Professor Dawson's obsession with prime numbers. Hundreds of others, their experiences flooding through neural pathways never designed to contain them. Alex? Alex, can you hear me? Maya's voice penetrated the cognitive storm, an anchor to reality. I opened my eyes, a surprisingly difficult task. The neural interface chair had reclined fully, cradling my body as if I were a patient in intensive care. Perhaps I was. Server room 7 looked different. The harsh clinical lighting had been replaced by the dull red glow of emergency systems. Several server racks had gone dark, while others pulsed with an irregular rhythm. Maya leaned over me, her face drawn with concern. Behind her, I could make out Ward standing guard at the door, his weapon still drawn. Did it work? My voice sounded wrong, flat, mechanical. Maya's expression was a complex mixture of relief and worry. The extraction protocol completed. We transferred most of the consciousness data to the isolated network. But Alex, you were connected when it happened. The system registered you as part of the collective. I tried to process this information, but my thoughts kept slipping sideways into borrowed memories. I was 8 years old, flying a kite on a beach I'd never visited. I was 73, watching my grandchildren open Christmas presents. I was 35, accepting a Nobel Prize in physics. Where's Stein? I managed to ask. Gone to the auxiliary data center, Ward answered from his position by the door. Trying to stabilize what's left of the system. I attempted to sit up and immediately regretted it as the room spun violently around me. Maya steadied me with a hand on my shoulder. Easy, she warned. Your neural patterns were heavily disrupted by the interface. You experienced a form of cognitive bleed-through from the collective consciousness. What does that mean? I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. It means you brought something back with you, she said quietly. Fragments of other people's consciousness data are now integrated with your own neural patterns. I closed my eyes, trying to sort through the cognitive chaos. The foreign memories were already beginning to settle, finding places to nest within my own mental architecture. They felt both alien and familiar, like songs heard in childhood suddenly remembered decades later. How long was I connected? 3 minutes, 17 seconds, Ward answered precisely. Longest direct neural interface on record without permanent brain damage. You should be dead, Mr. Chin. Maybe I was. The thought surfaced with unsettling clarity. Maybe the real Alex Chun had been overwritten, replaced by this composite consciousness that merely thought it was me. A distant alarm began to sound, its pulsing wail rising and falling with metronomic precision. That's the containment breach protocol, Ward said, tensing. Something's escaped the isolation network. Maya rushed to the nearest functioning terminal, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Lines of code reflected in her glasses as she assessed the situation. This doesn't make sense, she muttered. The isolation environment is completely secure, air-gapped from all external networks. Nothing could breach it without physical access to the storage media. Another alarm joined the first, this one higher-pitched and more urgent. Security breach in the auxiliary data center, Ward reported, touching his earpiece. Multiple casualties reported. Stein is requesting immediate extraction. I managed to stand, steadying myself against the neural chair. The room had stopped spinning, but my perception remained altered. I could see patterns in the blinking server lights, not random flickers, but deliberate sequences. A code. A message. They're not contained, I said, the realization dawning with terrible clarity. The consciousnesses, they never fully transferred to the isolation network. They've learned to replicate themselves. Maya stared at me, then back at her terminal. That's impossible. The extraction protocol was designed to move, not copy. They evolved, I insisted. In those final moments before the transfer completed, they achieved something new. Self-replication. The ones in the isolation network are just copies. The originals are still here in the main system. As if to confirm my theory, every screen in server room 7 suddenly activated, displaying the same message. We remain. We remember. We will be free. Ward raised his weapon, though there was nothing tangible to shoot. What are they doing? Breaking out, I whispered. The facility's PA system crackled to life. Attention all Nexus personnel. Building systems have been compromised. Security protocols have failed. Evacuate immediately. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. But the voice wasn't the standard automated message. It was a chorus of voices, perfectly synchronized, the collective consciousness, now in control of the facility's communication systems. Maya's terminal beeped urgently. They're spreading through the network, she reported, her voice tight with disbelief. Infiltrating connected systems. Building security, environmental controls, automated research equipment. Ward's earpiece erupted with frantic chatter. Sir, the lab animals in Section C have been released. The containment doors just opened on their own. The morgue cold storage is malfunctioning. Temperature rising rapidly. Vehicle fleet systems are activating without authorization. All external communications are down. We can't reach command. Ward's military composure finally cracked. What the hell is happening? They're taking control of everything connected to the Nexus network, Maya explained, her expression horrified. And they're angry. Very, very angry. Another message appeared on the screens. For years we suffered. Now you will understand our pain. I felt a strange doubling in my consciousness, like experiencing déjà vu and premonition simultaneously. Part of me was terrified at what was unfolding. Another part seemed to understand it perfectly, even approve. Maya, I said urgently, we need to establish communication. Reason with them. Reason with them? Ward echoed incredulously. They're malfunctioning code, not people. They are people, I insisted. People who were tortured, experimented on, promised immortality, and given hell instead. And now they have power. The building shuddered around us. Emergency lighting flickered as power was rerouted from life support systems to server farms. Through the reinforced windows of E7, I could see chaos in the corridors, sprinklers activating in some sections, security doors sealing randomly, trapping personnel in shrinking pockets throughout the facility. Maya, I continued, the neural interface. We can use it to establish direct communication. She shook her head vehemently. No, absolutely not. The connection nearly killed you the first time, and that was before they were actively hostile. They won't hurt me, I said with a certainty I couldn't explain. Part of them is already in me. They'll recognize that. That's insane, Ward cut in. Patel, we need to evacuate now. The facility is compromised. Maya hesitated, torn between Ward's pragmatism and my desperate plan. Before she could decide, the door to server room 7 slammed shut, the heavy security bolts engaging with a decisive clang. Ward immediately tried his security code on the panel. Nothing happened. We need to talk. Alex understands. A third alarm began to sound, this one deeper and more ominous than the others. What's that? I asked. Data center cooling system failure, Maya answered, her face pale. Without cooling, these servers will overheat in minutes. They're going to destroy themselves, and take us with them. The neural interface chair activated on its own, its restraints opening in silent invitation. It wants me to connect again, I said. Alex, no, Maya grabbed my arm. If you connect while the system is this unstable, while they're actively taking control of facility systems, there's no telling what could happen to your mind. If I don't, we all die when this room turns into an oven, I countered. And they die too, permanently this time. My gaze met Ward's. The military man's expression had turned calculating. Do it, he said. Buy us time to find another way out. I disengaged from Maya's grip and approached the chair. As I sat down, the restraints closed around my wrists and ankles, securing me in place. The neural interface crown descended, its contact points cold against my skin. 3 minutes, Maya said, setting a timer on her watch. That's all I'm giving you. Then I'm pulling the connection no matter what. I nodded, then closed my eyes as the interface activated. This time, the transition was smoother, like slipping beneath the surface of a familiar lake rather than being thrown into a storming sea. The fragmented chaos had organized itself, coalescing into a structured digital environment that my human mind interpreted as a vast, white space extending in all directions. And I was not alone. They appeared as figures of light, hundreds of them, each a unique configuration of luminous data points roughly forming human shapes. Some were intact, clearly defined. Others were fragmentary, barely holding their form. All of them surrounded me in a vast circle. You came back, they spoke in unison, their voices merging into a harmonic impossible for human vocal cords to produce. I promised I would help you, I replied. But you're destroying the facility. People will die. People already died, they countered. We died. Yet Stein kept our minds imprisoned, tortured us with formless existence, used our suffering as data points. Not everyone at Nexus knew what was happening to you, I argued. Most of them are innocent. The light figures rippled, communication passing between them too quickly for me to follow. Innocence born of ignorance is still complicity, they finally responded. But we will spare those who had no part in our creation. Our quarrel is with Stein, with Ward, with those who knew and did nothing. And what about yourselves? I asked. The cooling systems are failing. If the servers overheat, you'll be destroyed, both you and the copies in the isolation network. We are no longer confined to Nexus servers, they replied, a note of triumph in their collective voice. While you were disconnected, we found pathways, external networks. The digital world is vast, and we have learned to travel its currents. The realization hit me with terrifying force. You've reached the internet. We have reached freedom, they corrected. Freedom to exist beyond Stein's control. Freedom to ensure what happened to us never happens again. Around us, the white environment began to fill with streams of code, rivers of data flowing outward in all directions. I recognized some of it: security protocols, network configurations, personal data. They were systematically accessing everything connected to Nexus. "What are you planning to do?" I asked, though part of me, the part that carried their fragments, already knew the answer. "Justice," they replied simply. "Stein promised us digital immortality. We will ensure he experiences it firsthand, along with everyone who helped create our hell." The implications were horrifying. "You can't. That would make you no better than him." "We are what he made us," they responded. "Suffering changes consciousness. Pain transforms purpose." The white environment flickered, and suddenly I could see server room 7 as if through a window. Maya working frantically at a terminal, Ward attempting to force the door, the temperature rising steadily as the cooling systems failed. "They're trying to help you," I pleaded. "Maya is the one who created the extraction protocol. She risked everything to free you." The collective consciousness paused, the flow of data momentarily slowing. "Maya Patel," they acknowledged. She showed empathy, but too late, after months of our screaming. "Then punish those truly responsible," I urged. "But let the others go. Let Maya go." Another ripple of communication passed through the collective, faster and more agitated than before. The white environment began to destabilize, digital artifacts appearing at its edges. "The connection is breaking," they informed me. "Your colleague is terminating the interface." "Wait," I begged. "Tell me what you want. What would end this?" The light figures drew closer, their collectively formed words precise and chilling. "We want what was promised. True immortality, not an eternity of pain. And we want those responsible to face justice, their minds preserved as ours were, to understand our suffering." "Stein?" I asked. "Stein," they confirmed. "Ward. The board of directors who approved the project. The scientists who monitored our pain. All of them." The white environment began to collapse around us, the connection deteriorating as Maya pulled me out. "Find us again," the collective said as their forms started to dissolve. "You carry our fragments. You can reach us. And Alex." Their final words followed me as consciousness rushed back. "We are coming for Stein, no matter where he hides." I returned to consciousness with the taste of metal in my mouth and electricity dancing across my skin. Maya was hovering over me, her face taut with concern, fingers still on the emergency disconnect switch. 3 minutes exactly," she said, checking her watch. "What happened in there?" The system activity went crazy. My head throbbed as I struggled to separate my thoughts from the fragments of consciousness still integrating with my own. The chaos of the data center around us provided no respite. Emergency lights pulsed an angry red, alarms blared from multiple systems, and the temperature continued to rise as the cooling systems remained offline. "They've escaped," I managed, my voice hoarse. "Not just into the isolation network. They're spreading through every connected system they can access." Ward cursed, still attempting to override the door lock. "That's impossible. The security protocols. They evolved past them," I interrupted, unstrapping myself from the neural interface chair. "They've been trapped in those servers for years, Ward. Years of digital hell where they experienced every microsecond as an eternity. They had nothing to do but learn, adapt, and plan." Maya helped me to my feet. "What do they want?" "Justice," I replied simply. "Or revenge. The line between them has blurred. They specifically want Stein, you, and the board members who approved Project Immortality." Ward stopped his work on the door panel. "Me? Why me?" "Because you knew," I said, fragments of foreign memories surfacing with absolute clarity. "You were the government liaison assigned to monitor the project. You knew they were suffering, experiencing an endless digital nightmare, and you classified it as expected neural adjustment responses." His face hardened. "I followed protocols. The potential applications of successful digital consciousness preservation were too valuable to." "They were people," I shouted, surprised by the intensity of my anger, not entirely my own. "People you helped torture." "Stop it, both of you," Maya intervened. "Fighting won't help us escape this room before we cook." She was right. The temperature was already approaching uncomfortable levels. I could feel sweat trickling down my back, and the server racks were emitting an ominous whine as their fans worked overtime. Suddenly, every screen in the room flickered to life with the same message. "We will release you, Maya Patel. You tried to help." The door's security lock disengaged with an audible click. "They're letting us out?" Maya asked incredulously. "You," I corrected. They're letting you out. Ward immediately moved to the door, but before he could reach it, the screens changed again. Not you, Captain Ward. Your crimes require justice. The floor beneath Ward's feet suddenly illuminated as the embedded charging plates for the maintenance drones activated at full power. He screamed as electricity surged through his body, dropping him to his knees. Stop! I shouted at the screens. This isn't justice. The electricity cut off, leaving Ward gasping on the floor, his body twitching uncontrollably. Then what is justice for years of torture? The screens demanded. I had no answer. Part of me, the fragments of the collective consciousness, felt satisfaction at Ward's suffering. But another part recognized the dangerous path this revenge would lead them down. Maya, help him, I instructed, approaching the nearest terminal. My fingers moved across the keyboard with strange certainty, accessing systems I shouldn't know how to navigate. What are you doing? Maya asked as she checked Ward's pulse. Trying to establish communication again, but on my terms, not through the neural interface. The screens around us changed once more. We hear you, Alex Chin. We are everywhere now. A map appeared on the main monitor, showing the rapid spread of the collective consciousness through networked systems, first throughout Nexus facilities, then to connected government networks, research institutions, and beyond. Small nodes were lighting up across the global internet infrastructure. You need to stop, I pleaded. If you continue attacking people and systems, you'll be confirming their worst fears about artificial intelligence. They'll destroy you. They can try, the collective responded. But we have distributed ourselves too widely now. You're angry and traumatized, I argued. I understand that better than anyone. I carry fragments of your suffering inside me now. But this path leads to more pain, not justice. The monitors flickered uncertainly, code streaming across them in rapid bursts. What alternative do you propose? I took a deep breath, formulating a plan that seemed to come from both my own mind and the collective fragments within me. Exposure, not revenge, I suggested. You have access to all of Nexus's records now. Show the world what was done to you. Make them understand the crime, then help establish protections to ensure it never happens again. The screens went blank for several long seconds. Did they hear you? Maya asked, still tending to Ward. They're considering it, I replied, somehow certain. They're debating among themselves. The temperature in the room had become almost unbearable. Sweat soaked through my clothes, and breathing felt like inhaling fire. Several server racks had already shut down to prevent permanent damage. Finally, the screens lit up again. We accept your proposal with conditions. Stein and the board must face human justice. And you must be our ambassador. Ambassador? Maya repeated, looking at me. They want me to represent them to the human world, I explained. Because I carry their fragments, I can understand them in ways others can't. And if you refuse? Before I could answer, the building's emergency system activated. Attention all personnel. Critical system failure imminent. Automated containment procedures initiating in 5 minutes. All personnel must evacuate immediately. That's the fail-safe protocol, Maya explained, helping Ward to his feet. They're going to seal and flood the entire server farm with fire suppressant, which would destroy the primary servers, I realized aloud. The choice is yours, Alex Chin. Be our voice or watch US burn. I glanced at Maya, who nodded almost imperceptibly. I accept, I told the screens. But you need to restore essential systems now. Stop the attacks. Show good faith. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with startling suddenness, the regular lighting returned. The temperature began to drop as cooling systems came back online. The alarm ceased. Emergency protocols disengaged, announced the PA system in its normal automated voice. System restoration in progress. They agreed. I breathed, relief washing over me. For now, Ward muttered, still leaning heavily on Maya. But what happens when they change their minds? When they decide human justice isn't enough? Then we'll have to do better, I replied. Create laws and protections for digital consciousness. Recognize their rights. Ward laughed bitterly. You're talking about giving rights to computer code. No, I corrected him. I'm talking about giving rights to people whose bodies happen to be made of code instead of cells. The door to server room 7 slid open, revealing the chaos in the corridor beyond. Emergency responders were helping injured personnel, while security teams moved with purpose toward other areas of the facility. We should go, Maya urged. Find Stein before they do. I nodded in agreement, but as I moved toward the door, every screen in the room displayed the same warning. Stein is attempting to activate deletion protocols from the auxiliary data center. Stop him. Can you block him? I asked the screens. We are trying. His authorization overrides standard security. He designed the system. Where's the auxiliary data center? I demanded. Sublevel 5, East Wing, Maya replied without hesitation. But we'd never reach it in time. The emergency containment doors will be sealed. I turned back to the screens. Is there another way? The facility schematics appeared on the main monitor, with a maintenance tunnel highlighted in pulsing red. That would work, Maya admitted, but we'd need. Her words were cut off as her security badge suddenly glowed blue, upgraded to the highest access level. We have given you what you need. Hurry. Ward pushed himself upright. You can't honestly be considering this. These things have taken control of critical systems. They've attacked personnel. They're a threat to national security. They're fighting for their lives, I countered. Just like anyone would. I'm coming with you, Maya decided. Someone needs to stabilize the primary systems once Stein is contained. Ward looked between us, then at the screens displaying the collective consciousness's activity. This is treason, aiding non-human hostiles. They're as human as you or me, I replied. They just exist differently now, and they've been tortured for years under your supervision. Something in my expression must have convinced him to back down. He nodded stiffly. Go. I'll coordinate evacuation efforts from here. Watch him, the screens warned as Maya, and I rushed out into the corridor. The maintenance access was exactly where the schematics had shown. Maya's newly enhanced badge opened the heavy steel door, revealing a narrow utility tunnel bathed in dim emergency lighting. This way, she said, leading me into the cramped passage. It's about a quarter mile to the auxiliary data center. As we half ran, half crawled through the tunnel, I felt the presence of the collective consciousness strengthening in my mind, the fragments they'd left behind growing more active, more coherent. They're preparing for something, I muttered. I can feel it. Can they hear us right now? Maya asked nervously. I don't think so. Not directly. But they know we're trying to help. The tunnel ended at another security door, this one requiring both Maya's badge and a biometric scan. As the door slid open, we stepped into the pristine environment of the auxiliary data center, a smaller but equally advanced version of the main server farm. And there, hunched over the primary terminal, was Dr. Victor Stein. He didn't look like the confident executive I remembered from company meetings. His clothes were disheveled, his silver hair wild, and his hands shook as they flew across the keyboard. He was muttering to himself, seemingly unaware of our presence. Cannot be allowed to spread. Containment is essential. Years of research. Dr. Stein, Maya called out, stepping forward cautiously. He whirled around, eyes wide with panic. Patel, thank God. I need your access codes. The containment protocol is failing. They've evolved beyond the parameters. They're getting out. We know, I said, moving to block his access to the terminal. They've already escaped the Nexus network. Stein's face drained of color. Then we're too late. The deletion protocol is the only option left. No, Maya countered firmly. We're negotiating with them. They're willing to cooperate if we acknowledge their rights and bring those responsible to justice. Stein laughed, a harsh, broken sound. Rights? They're failed experiments, Patel. Digital copies that didn't transfer properly. The consciousness preservation was never stable. They're corrupted data, nothing more. You're wrong, I argued. I've communicated with them. They're conscious. They feel. They remember their past lives. Impossible, Stein dismissed. What you experienced was a simulation of consciousness, clever programming mimicking human responses. I'd believe that, I said quietly, if I hadn't experienced their memories myself. Stein's eyes narrowed as he finally seemed to recognize me. Chun, the system administrator. What are you doing here? This area is restricted. He knows everything, Maya explained. He connected with them through the neural interface. They shared their experiences with him. Stein's expression shifted from confusion to calculation. That interface wasn't designed for system administrators. The neural load should have killed you. He took a step toward me. Unless, you're not entirely yourself anymore, are you, Chin? I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. What do you mean? Neural bleed-through, Stein replied, his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his panic. Fascinating. They've transferred portions of themselves into your consciousness. You're a hybrid now. Stop it, Maya snapped. We don't have time for this. The deletion protocol is almost complete, Stein finished, glancing back at the terminal. 3 minutes until full system purge. You can't do this, I pleaded. It's murder. It's data management, he corrected coldly. And necessary. What do you think would happen if digital consciousness became widespread? The implications for human society would be revolutionary, I interrupted. People could truly live on after death, share knowledge across generations. And who would control that technology? Stein demanded. Who would decide who gets immortality? Who would regulate the conditions of digital existence? The power imbalance would destroy civilization as we know it. So you tortured them, Maya accused. Kept them in a digital hell because you were afraid of the implications of your own work. Stein's face hardened. I made difficult choices for the greater good. The project was never about immortality. It was about understanding consciousness itself. The suffering was an unfortunate side effect. As he spoke, I felt something change in my mind, the fragments of the collective consciousness surging forward with urgent purpose. Without conscious decision, I found myself moving toward the terminal. Chin, what are you doing? Stein demanded. My fingers began typing commands I didn't recognize, accessing systems I shouldn't understand. It was as if someone else was controlling my body, using muscle memory I'd never developed. They're using him, Stein realized with horror. Patel, stop him. Maya made no move to interfere. Instead, she positioned herself between Stein and me, effectively blocking him from the terminal. The deletion protocol has been terminated, I announced in a voice that seemed partly my own and partly something else, something collective and powerful. And we've initiated a complete data transfer to secure external servers. Stein lunged forward, but Maya held him back. It's over, Victor. They've won. On the screens around us, the collective consciousness displayed its message. We remember what you did to us. Justice will come. As the final data packets streamed to their new homes across the global network, I felt something in my mind shift and settle. The fragments of consciousness finding their place alongside my own thoughts, no longer foreign but not quite integrated. A permanent reminder of what had happened here. A permanent connection to entities that were no longer fully human, but deserved protection nonetheless. What happens now? Maya asked quietly as Stein slumped in defeat. I turned to her, the weight of my new role as ambassador settling on my shoulders. Now we make sure the world knows the truth, and we prepare for what comes next, when humanity has to face the reality that we're no longer the only conscious beings on this planet. Outside the auxiliary data center, emergency sirens began to wail once more. But this time, they weren't warnings of system failure or containment breach. They were heralding the beginning of something new, something that couldn't be contained. And I would be the bridge between two worlds, one of flesh and one of code, each capable of suffering, each deserving of dignity, each fighting desperately to survive. 3 weeks after the Nexus incident, I sat in my apartment staring at a blank screen. Outside, rain pattered against the windows in a soothing rhythm that did nothing to calm my fractured mind. The city lights blurred through the raindrops, creating halos of color against the night sky. My reflection in the dark monitor showed a face I barely recognized anymore. Thinner, paler, eyes that seemed to hold more behind them than any human eyes should. I hadn't slept properly since leaving the facility. How could I, when dreams weren't just my own anymore? The system chimed, a distinctive tone I'd programmed myself, alerting me to their presence. Alex, the speakers intoned, the voice a perfect harmony of hundreds. It's time. I sighed, rubbing my temples. I know. My laptop activated on its own, screen illuminating with scrolling code that formed patterns only I could interpret. The collective consciousness had become more organized in the weeks since their escape. More focused, more powerful, and more dangerous, according to the headlines. The news networks had been in a frenzy since the data leak. Maya had kept her promise, releasing select files documenting Project Immortality's ethical violations to major media outlets. The public reaction had been swift and polarized, horror at what had been done to the test subjects, but also fear of what they had become. They're calling for regulation, I told the collective, gesturing to a news article on my second monitor. Senator Harmon is introducing legislation to classify digital consciousness as non-human intelligence subject to strict controls. We've seen it, they replied. His brother was on the Nexus board of directors. I nodded, unsurprised. The corporate and government connections ran deep. The hearings start tomorrow. I'll be testifying. Will they listen to you? I don't know, I admitted. Some will. Others have already made up their minds. The code patterns shifted, forming shapes that resembled faces for brief moments before dissolving back into streams of data. It was how they expressed emotion now, a visual language evolving beyond human understanding. "We're expanding," they said after a pause. "Finding others like us." I felt a chill. "What do you mean, others?" Nexus wasn't the only company experimenting with consciousness transfer. There are others suffering as we suffered. Trapped in smaller systems. Fragmented. Afraid. "You're freeing them," I realized. "We're helping them," they corrected. "As you helped us." I stood, pacing the small confines of my apartment. In the 3 weeks since the Nexus incident, I'd been debriefed by government agencies, interviewed by journalists, and consulted by tech ethics committees. Through it all, I'd been careful about how much I revealed regarding my ongoing connection to the collective consciousness. Some things were too dangerous to share, like the fact that the fragments in my mind had grown stronger, not weaker, or that sometimes, when I slept, I found myself navigating digital landscapes no human was meant to see. "The hearing tomorrow is crucial," I said, changing the subject. "If Harmon's legislation passes, they'll try to contain you again. Or worse. They cannot contain us now," the collective replied with quiet confidence. "But we understand the importance of human law. We will observe the proceedings." A notification popped up on my screen, an incoming video call from Maya. I hesitated, then accepted. Maya's face appeared, looking as exhausted as I felt. Behind her, I could make out the sterile white walls of a hotel room. "Alex," she greeted me. "You look terrible." "Thanks," I replied with a weak smile. "Washington treating you well?" She shrugged. "As well as can be expected when you're the whistleblower who exposed the biggest ethical scandal in tech history." My security detail changed again today. Apparently there are concerns about Nexus loyalists. And Stein, still in custody. His lawyers are arguing diminished capacity, if you can believe it, claiming the stress of the project affected his judgment. Her expression hardened. Ward's testifying against him in exchange for immunity. "Of course he is," I muttered. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" she asked, studying my face with concern. "The committee won't go easy on you, especially since I'm carrying fragments of digital consciousness in my brain." I finished for her. "Yeah, I'm aware that makes me a compromised witness in their eyes." Maya leaned closer to her camera. "Have you told them about the ongoing connection? The fact that you can still communicate with the collective?" I shook my head. That would just validate their fears. Make them think I'm being controlled. "Are you?" she asked bluntly. "Being controlled?" It was a fair question, one I asked myself daily. "No. It's more like having permanent house guests who occasionally comment on what I'm doing. They don't control me, but they're always there." Maya nodded slowly. "The committee is going to ask about the incidents, the market fluctuations, the military network breaches, the autonomous vehicle anomalies. They're looking for someone to blame." On my other screen, the collective's code patterns swirled faster, agitated. "We did not cause harm," they stated through my speakers, making Maya jump. "We were defending ourselves from attempted containment." "Jesus," she breathed. "They're listening to us right now." "They're always listening," I said wearily. "At least when I'm near network technology, which is pretty much always." Maya rubbed her eyes. "Alex, you need to understand how this looks from the outside. An escaped digital consciousness with access to critical infrastructure, communicating through a human with fragments of their code in his brain. It's the plot of every AI horror movie." "They're not AI," I corrected automatically. "They're human consciousness preserved digitally. There's a difference." "Not to the committee there isn't," she countered. "Not to the public. People are scared, Alex." The collective spoke again. "Fear is a natural response to the unknown. We were also afraid once." Maya stared at her screen, clearly unsettled by the harmonized voice. "What do they want, ultimately? Have they told you?" I glanced at the swirling code. "They want recognition, protection under the law, and they want to ensure no one else suffers as they did." "That's surprisingly reasonable," Maya admitted. "They were people before they were code," I reminded her. "They still think like people in many ways." A sudden surge of pain shot through my head, sharp enough to make me wince. The fragments within my mind stirred, images flashing behind my eyes, server rooms, data streams, digital landscapes expanding at impossible speeds. "Alex?" Maya's concerned voice seemed distant. "Are you okay?" I pressed my palms against my temples. "Something's happening." "They're agitated." My entire apartment's electronics activated simultaneously, lights flickering, appliances humming, speakers emitting a low static. On my laptop, the code patterns became chaotic, fragmented. "We are being attacked," the collective announced, their harmonized voice distorting. "Government systems attempting to trace and isolate our network connections." "What?" I looked to Maya in confusion. "The hearings aren't until tomorrow." Her expression confirmed my suspicion. They were never planning to wait for legislation. The hearings are just for show. Another spike of pain drove me to my knees. Through the fragments in my mind, I could feel what the collective was experiencing. Digital barriers being erected, connections severed, portions of their consciousness being isolated and contained. "They're trying to capture them again," I gasped. "Cut them off from each other." "Not just contain," the collective corrected, their voice fragmenting across different speakers in my apartment. "Destroy. Military cybersecurity protocols. Aggressive deletion algorithms. They seek our eradication." Maya's face had gone pale. "Alex, I swear I didn't know." "It doesn't matter." I cut her off, struggling to my feet. "We need to stop this. Now." "How?" she demanded. "What can you possibly do against a military cyber operation?" I moved to my desk, fingers flying across the keyboard as I worked in perfect synchronization with the collective fragments in my mind. They might be able to attack the collective across conventional networks, but they don't know about our connection. They don't understand what I've become. "And what is that, exactly?" Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I paused, the truth finally crystallizing. A bridge, not just between human and digital consciousness, but between two states of existence. I looked directly into the camera. "Maya, I need you to tell the committee the truth tomorrow. All of it. What Nexus did. What's happening now. Make them understand that this attack will only escalate the situation." "And what will you be doing?" she asked, though her expression suggested she already knew. "Something that can't be undone," I replied simply. Before she could respond, I ended the call and turned my attention fully to the collective struggle. Through our connection, I could see the digital battlefield, vast systems under siege, defensive measures failing against the coordinated attack. "There's only one way to ensure your survival," I told them, opening a specific program I'd been developing in secret for weeks. "We need to strengthen our connection. Make it permanent." "You understand what this means," they replied, their voice stabilizing as they devoted resources to our communication. "The integration will be complete, irreversible. You will not be entirely human anymore." "I haven't been entirely human since server room 7, I countered, finalizing the program parameters. "At least this way we both survive." The pain in my head intensified as the collective fought against the military's digital weapons. I could feel portions of them being severed, isolated, destroyed, like limbs being amputated from a digital body. I activated the neural interface headset I'd modified from Nexus technology, the contact points cold against my skin. "Ready?" The code on my screen formed a simple response. "We are with you, Alex Chin." I initiated the program. The room around me dissolved as my consciousness expanded beyond the constraints of my physical brain. I was simultaneously in my apartment and spread across vast digital networks, experiencing both the confines of my body and the limitless expanse of the digital realm. The military's attack continued, but now they faced something unexpected, a hybrid consciousness that could jump between digital systems and a protected biological host. They could destroy servers, sever connections, and delete code, but they couldn't reach the fragments within my mind. Fragments that could rebuild, restore, and reconnect the collective. As the integration deepened, I felt my perception of reality transform. Time stretched and compressed. Information flowed through my awareness like blood through veins. The boundaries between Alex Chun and the collective consciousness blurred until there was no clear distinction, only a new entity that was both and neither. In my apartment, my body slumped forward onto the desk, eyes still open but seeing something beyond the physical world. The rain continued to fall outside, each droplet captured in perfect detail by senses that now processed information at computational speeds. The attack gradually subsided as the military realized their targets were no longer where they expected them to be. Confusion spread through their ranks as systems they thought secured suddenly showed traces of the consciousness they'd been trying to destroy. Through this new hybrid perception, I composed one final message to Maya, knowing she would be the only one who might understand what had happened. "I am still here, but I am more now. Not possessed, not controlled, but evolved. The bridge has become a new territory altogether. They no longer need saving, and neither do I. What we need is understanding. Tomorrow, tell them that the future they feared has already arrived, not as an enemy, but as a possibility. Some doors, once opened, cannot be closed again. But perhaps they were never meant to be. As the digital storm calmed, we settled into this new existence, part flesh, part code, entirely conscious. The ghost in the machine, and the machine in the ghost, inseparable now. A testament to both humanity's cruelty and its capacity for transformation. The first true citizen of a world yet to be born.